Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you with Hellions number 4. Now, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I completely have had my fill of the Krakoa era X-Men. The only books that I will say have piqued my interest and continued to kind of make me kind of come back and take them off the racks is Hellions. I feel that Zeb Wells has done an excellent job with this book. And then Benjamin Percy, in my personal opinion, let me know what you guys think, has been killing it on X-Force and Wolverine. Because it's separate than everything that the pod people that I will call those X-Men are doing. So with that said, let's dive into this story. Now, for those, I don't care about any of this anymore. The last 3 issues, these Hellions, which are the Dirty Dozen, as I've said before, are tasked with going and kind of cleaning up Sinister's old genetic mistakes. Here they run into clones of the Marauders. If you're not sure what that is, go back and read Chris Claremont's original, I don't remember what issue it is, but it shows how the Marauders wiped out 90% of the Morlocks. And that's kind of what made them villains throughout the years. They were the ones that were responsible for Archangel's wings being amputated, and what kind of pushed him down the road to become Archangel. And then, of course, we focus on Madeline Pryor, who's working in Sinister's old lair where we're currently taking place. If you want to know more about Madeline Pryor, go back and read shortly after the death of Jean Grey, which was issue, 140? 142 was Days of Future Past. So probably about like 139, I think. But anyway, Scott meets a woman named Madeline Pryor. And it's later revealed that she is a clone of Jean Grey, as I've said. And it breaks her. Now, we've gone over the infernal parts of X Factor, so I'll leave cards up here where you guys can watch them at your convenience, but you can see how she finds out that she's not a person, but just a copy of a cop. You get it. But it drives her mad. And I like the way she's brought back here. She goes, that pig, Essex, built a lamentable thing here, rending reality as he penetrates its depths. And as the depths open in ways unholy and mad, the shore between earth and hell was scrapped away. And if you'll recall, Madeline was enticed by Limbo. And if she sacrificed her son, she could open the gates of hell on earth. So I like that Zeb Wells kind of digs into the past of what made X-Men great with what Claremont and Louise Simonson and Ann Nasanti were doing back in the day. And Havoc is torn because after Cyclops left, he was there to pick up the pieces for Madeline and fell in love with her. And so that's why, from the last couple of issues, he's sort of docile in a sense because he cares deeply for her. But the one thing that I will say about the modern X books that are driving me nuts, and this harkens all the way back to the end of Remender's Uncanny Avengers, is I don't like the way that they've deconstructed Havoc. Now, what do I mean by that? Go read Uncanny Avengers. Havoc is set up to be the leader of this team by Steve Rogers and Tony in order to help better mutant relations after the fallout of AVX. And it suits him very well. Again, he's like the reluctant hero, and that's what has always made Havoc interesting for me, is that's where Scott is always kind of in the pocket. Yes, he questions himself, but he has Xavier and Jean to back him up. Havoc has Lorna Dane, Polaris, but throughout the Claremont era, he really ran these two through the mill. Lorna was part of the Marauders for the longest time, being possessed, and their relationship has been rocky because of it. But he leaned on her during the Peter David era of X Factor, and he talks about how he doesn't want to live in his brother's shadow. If we go back and read what was X Factor 87, I think it was, I'll leave another card. But you see how he's still strong and does the best that he can. But at the end of Uncanny Avengers, as they busted into Axis, They made villains heroes and heroes villains. Well, they made Tony Stark a villain, which was absolutely terrible. They made Havoc a villain, which after all this time of them building him up in an Uncanny Avengers, having him with a relationship with Janet Van Dyne, I think that's how you say her name, the Wasp, it was interesting, and I read it. It was so good, but Marvel wanted to make an event, and they broke Havoc. So in a sense, just kind of seeing him on this team, because Hellions is supposed to be like a rehab team, essentially. Quanon Psylocke is the team leader to kind of keep everyone in line. So you have Nanny, Orphan Maker, Wild Child, and Havoc. And they're saying that they're kind of iffy on if he can be reformed or not. So anyway, with that said, this is Zeb Wells writing, Steven Segovia, artist, David Carell doing the colors, VC's Ariana Maher doing the lettering. Here's everyone else working on the book. Now, again, these are sinister clones of Harpoon's Marauders. And so there's he's kind of torn on these are his people that he cares about, even though us, the reader, we don't care too much about them after what they did to the Morlocks. But I do like Nanny and Orphan Maker. She's kind of like this motherly person, even though she's twisted. And so the Marauders are beating her, and she's like, delinquents, miscreants. And they're just like, now we feast. Choke on it, you dirty brat. And that's what I like. Again, this book just does not feel like pod people, like what the main X books to me feel like, where the X-Men used to preach tolerance and compassion. Now they're just this, there's a word for it, isolationists. And it's just so far from what, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby set up, to what Claremont did, to what Fabian Nicieza and Scott Liddell did through all those years, even Grant Morrison. But it just doesn't feel like them. That's why I like this book, because we're already dealing with characters that have issues. The last couple, if you've read them, I love how Wild Child and Quanon fought for dominance of the Marauders, or not the Marauders, the Hellions, and it does something interesting to these two. It creates a very interesting relationship. But what I like is as Wild Child gets harpooned, and he's kind of like Sabretooth and Wolverine, he kind of has this healing factor, and she just stands over, rips it out of his chest, get back in there. Yes, ma'am. And you just see the brutality of what Quanon is without the moral scruples of Betsy Braddock. She just goes to town. And what's interesting, again, is, you don't want to care about Harpoon or any of the Marauders, but they start to give, I can't remember his real name, I think it's John, but you actually start to see a different layer to him other than just a villain. And I like what Zeb Wells is building up with him. Some of the artwork feels a little flat, like this I feel could have been a little more dynamic. But if you read the panels above, which I want you guys to read this book, because it is actually really entertaining. What happens here is a little heartbreaking, but it does make sense in the end. And so, again, even though the moments with Madeline are talking, if you know who she is, you understand what she's trying to get at with Havoc. And again, she's back from the dead, and she's hurt. She's hurt really bad, and you can kind of see the duality because how Havoc is broken. And, she says, "I never lost my hold on you, did I? One side of me was all it took to rend your sanity to wet threads." Sure, Maddie, if that makes you feel better. Your wounded mind. It wasn't me. Who did this to you, Alex? What happened to you, baby? So at this point, you're kind of wondering, does she really care, or is she just trying to lure him to her side? Because, again, back in Inferno, she warps a lot of the X-Men's minds to work for her, but something happens with Harpoon. And, again, it starts to break Havoc. And I like this tender moment. She goes, you know, even though what she says is terrifying, because she's like, the ceremony is broken. They're leaving. In the end, not even the demons stay. Because she's talking about how she doesn't want to be a nothing person. She wants to have her own existence. Louise Simonson really got to the core of it when she's going against Jean Grey. And so she's looking at Havoc and she goes, only you. And she heals him as one of her last acts. And she says, I only wanted them to know that I was a real girl. And that's all Madeline has ever wanted. So that's why you can't hate her too much. Yeah, she's done some horrible things, but so has Jean Grey, killing an entire planet, even though that was the Phoenix. But anyway, Maddie was really thrown under the bus through the X-Men years. But yeah, we get this moment with Havoc. Oh my God, look at this dynamic art. Not flat, not boring. And you just see him tear apart this meat factory that Sinister had. And again, this is what I mean by something's not right with Havoc. And I'm a little upset that he's, again, shown as a broken character. Because even on the latter half of Matthew Rosenberg's Uncanny X-Men, before the Dawn of X launched, Havoc was a little more level-headed than Scott. And it was a really interesting read. We'll go back through those. I had those up on the channel at one point, but long story short, they're kind of going back to Havoc when he was a villain. And as we just saw him tearing apart this building, he goes, did I do that? And so let's kind of jump into what I'm talking about, where there's an interesting relationship now between Kwannon and Wildchild. She goes, a dog will hunt, and we must rest peace wherever we find it. So we see Betsy, Harpoon, and Wildchild looking at a sunset. Very interesting juxtaposition of everything that we just seen, and that the nature of these characters. And then there's a meeting of the Silent Council, and what it is they say that the resurrection of Madeline Pryor, her hangs in the balance, because they have to talk about, is she a real person or just a copy? And, you know, Cyclops says, I tried. It's a no then. There are protocols, since she was a clone of Jean. The council doesn't want. What do you want? And you see Scott hesitate. And Havoc tries to say, she was a real person, Scott. She existed. So, overall, Zeb Wells really hit some great emotional spots in this book. Kind of giving you some new information, giving credit to the past, and honoring it the way that we should, because what Luis, again, what those three did through the X-Men years really belted up. I kind of wish that Havoc wasn't a broken character, but for this book, it works. I just hope that in the end, however long Hellions runs, that they build Havoc back up, and that he's not a pod person. Even at the end, when you're reading Cyclops, he feels like Scott. He doesn't feel like this separatist who's just blindly following what Xavier wants right now. So again, that's why I love Hellions, X-Force, and Wolverine, because these, even though they have to acknowledge the Krakoa stuff, these feel more like something to read in a traditional X-Men book. The one thing that does kill me is the dialogue that they use for Sinister, because Sinister to me has always been more of like a civilized gentleman aristocrat. And in all the Krakoan books that I've read thus far, he kind of has this LOL so random types dialogue. It is really off-putting and out of character for me. But that aside, overall, Hellions #4, awesome read. If you guys have enjoyed this, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and pick up a copy. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. and come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your feedback down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, I hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.